Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Neurodiversity by Education, the Inspired Community Project presentation. My name is Amanda Williams, and I am a member of the University Development and Alumni Relations team. We are so glad to have you join us today. The Inspired Community Project was founded under the idea that special education instruction, resources, and career opportunities should be equally accessible across all people, communities, and boroughs. With New York City being one of the most diverse cities in the world, but having one of the most segregated and inequitable education systems in the country, there's work to do. So the Inspired Community Project's mission is to create lifelong learners. They not only teach children how to learn, empower families to be fierce advocates, but they also support community members to become certified professionals that the Bronx desperately needs. So through high quality training, hands-on support, and people-first focus, TICP is creating a sustainable foundation for future generations within the special education community. So TICP envisions equitable access to special education services and resources by creating a program of the community for the community, because as they say, the closest to the program are closest to the solution. So as a reminder, this session is being recorded and will be available to rewatch after the session. As the session progresses, please feel free to use the Q&A box to ask questions. We will get to as many as we can during our program. Without further ado, I want to introduce our speaker. So after more than 15 years in education as a special educator, board certified and licensed behavioral analyst, supervisor, and mentor, Jillian Moses has served and supported Jill has supported the neurodiverse community all over NYC. Jill Moses sought to use her passion, expertise, skill set, and resources to enact true change. So in 2021, she founded the only self-sustaining female educator and BIPOC-led holistic early intervention program in New York. The Inspired Community Project not only provides empirically sound therapeutic services to neurodiverse children, but supports and uplifts community members into special education careers. With financial literacy and wellness support, she is creating not only a stronger workforce, but a solid foundation for community uplift going forward. So without further ado, I will turn the presentation over to Jill. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Thank you for all your kind words, and I'm really excited to be here. Let me share away. Okay, so thanks again, Amanda, and to the NYU alumni team for inviting me to share our work with this community. Second, I want to acknowledge that I'm going to be sensitive to the language that I use in this conversation. I'm in practice of using neurodiverse when speaking about our groups of children that we serve, but I also will be using children who have developmental delays or disabilities to keep consistent with the verbiage used by early intervention when they describe their programming. I started the Inspired Community Project in September 2021 after more than 15 years of working in education and serving the neurodiverse community all over New York City. As anyone in education can tell you, our frustrations and pain points are never with the people we are working to serve. It's never the children, it's never the families or the communities. It's always the limitations of the systems. Most people go into education because they want to change the system, or they want to make a difference. They want to have an impact. But more often than not, educators leave the field frustrated, at a loss, and feeling defeated. Educators are constantly looking for great ideas, the teaching hacks, the streamlined systems and new processes. We love efficiency and efficacy. We're collectors of good ideas. Because we have to think on the fly, we have to tap into our collections of best practices. We don't just watch, we observe, we experience, we test, and we hone. Take a look at Teachers Pay Teachers. This is a $1 million platform built off of the idea that teachers want to share their best practices and quality resources outside of the system. By the way, this platform makes $84 million a year, and it grew so fast within its first year that Scholastic, yes, that's Scholastic, acquired them. This system of shared resources allowed teachers to learn from other educators all over the world and utilize their best practices. As for me, my education journey has taken me all over New York City collecting best practices and good ideas. As a baby therapist, I was delivering early intervention services in living rooms, daycares, schools, community centers. I was learning what family-centered care really means and observing the best practices from my mentors. Then I spent 8 years with the New York City Department of Education, working in District 75. I was supporting students with the highest level of need, most of them a step above home and hospital instruction. I was observing red tape and bureaucracy, its impact on the family-centered care, and how the system was not designed for certain people and communities. I was learning how to overcome barriers to support my students, but often frustrated in the process. I was also learning the fundamentals of fundraising, don't or choose anybody, has come in handy in the recent role here at the Inspired Community Project. Growing into my profession, I became a board-certified behavior analyst and began supervising and training baby therapists after school while teaching full-time. I was learning what it meant to train the trainer and observe the frustrations of those who were entering the field for the first time with the big, fresh eyes of excitement. I then had the opportunity to run a center-based early intervention program. And all of a sudden, I found myself in those admin meetings that I'd never imagined I would ever be in. And if I'm being honest, if you had asked me if I wanted to get my admin license or be a principal one day, I would have laughed and said, absolutely not. But in this role, I was living and learning that just because you have the ideas and solutions doesn't mean you have the platform to implement them. The time had come, I could no longer talk about it, I had to be about it. And so I sat down and decided I was going to start the Inspired Community Project. Once I was fully committed to the idea, friends and family with their buy-in and support, the systems and solutions poured out of me and into a business plan. When I stepped back, what had been growing and developing in my heart and mind for over 15 years was real. It was right there on the piece of paper, maybe 6 or 7 papers. But most importantly, I found a way to make it self-sustaining. Side note, in my head, this is how I looked putting all of that together that night. Cute little doodles of innovation. But if you ask my friends, I'm sure I sounded more like this the next day. This past November, we held our 2nd annual Giving Tuesday fundraiser. And one of our board members was speaking about our impact and why we've had such support and success so quickly. And he said something that really struck me to my core. He gave me language to something I had always felt as an educator, but never really had a way to articulate. Those who are closest to the problem are closest to the solution. If that doesn't encapsulate the power teachers and educators hold to fix the broken system, I don't know what does. Okay, stick with me, a little audience participation time. Don't worry, I'm not going to do any icebreakers. We're not going around sharing our 2 truths and a lie. But I do want to know, however, how familiar are you with early intervention? You're going to see a pop-up come up, and if you can just answer and give me an idea so we kind of know where the audience is. I'll give everybody a couple seconds to answer. Are you a newbie with no idea, ready to learn? Are you a novice? You know of it, but that's about it. Are you a supporter who works in education, medical spaces, early childhood spaces? Or are you a superhero? Have you utilized it? Has your child utilized it? All right. Oh, got pretty good response rate so far. Give it another minute. That's fantastic. We have lots of newbies in here. All right, 10 more seconds. All right, 3, 2. All right. All right, so it looks like we're majority newbies in here, and that's fantastic. So I'm glad to give you the framework and the basis for what you're going to know about early intervention. New York State's early intervention program, lovingly known as EI, is a comprehensive program that provides services and support to families with young children from birth to 3 years old who have developmental delays or disabilities. The program is designed to help families support their child's development, improve their daily living skills, provide support to families as they navigate the early child system. EI services can include evaluations and assessments, family training and counseling, speech and language therapy, physical therapy, and other types of support services, but they're tailored and unique to each child and family. Services are to be provided in natural environments. So that means a child's home, their daycare center, or out in the community. They're intended to support the child's growth and development in all areas: physical, cognitive, communication, and even social emotional. The most important part of early intervention is the program is designed to be family-centered, meaning that families should be involved in every single aspect of the program and the decision-making process. In New York State, EI typically involves the following steps. A referral for EI services can come from a variety of sources, including pediatrician, family members, daycare providers, or really any other concerned individual. Parents and guardians can also reach out directly to the EI program to request an evaluation if they suspect a need. Once the referral is made, a team of specialists will evaluate the child to determine if they are eligible for EI services. The evaluation will assess the child's developmental abilities in multiple areas such as communication, mobility, and social emotional development. Based on this evaluation, the team then determines if the child is eligible for EI services. To be deemed eligible, a child must have a developmental delay or disability in one or more areas, or be at a high risk for such delays. Individualized Family Service Plan, IFSP. If the child is eligible for services, the early intervention team will work with the family to develop the IFSP. This is a written plan that outlines the specific services and supports that the child and family will receive throughout their time in the EI program. EI services are provided in the child's natural environment, again, places like the home, daycare, or out in the community. The services are designed to meet the unique needs of each child and family, and may also include family training and counseling, in-home speech and language therapy, physical therapy, and other types of support services. Quality EI programs regularly monitor the child's progress and reviews the IFSP goals to ensure the services and supports provided are actually meeting the child's and family's needs. It's essential and important to note that the families are supposed to be not only involved in every aspect of this process, but they are the core. They are the pinpoint for how all decisions should be made. It is about how to support them in the best capacity, and they have to be involved in the decision-making process. Now, while all of this looks and sounds good in theory and policy, what is it actually looking like in action? That's a great question. I'd love to tell you. So between referral and evaluation, we're not even talking about actual services yet, just between those two steps. This image shows the number of children who are referred for evaluations, but never actually obtain one. Note the dark blue sections, mostly covering the Bronx, where on average 18% of children who are referred for evaluations never even receive them. This is a small statistic that tells of a much bigger story. This drop-off is due to the inequity in healthcare and lack of quality childcare programs where referral and evaluations would normally take place, speaking to a much larger inequity and inequality in the borough of the Bronx, which is another talk for another day. So let's say you're one of the families that made it all the way through. You got your referral, you got your evaluation, you are found eligible. Congratulations, your family is ready to receive services. In the Bronx, 40% of those children who are mandated for services had a 45+ day delay in obtaining them. Now, I know 45 days doesn't sound like a lot, but you have to remember the scope. When services end at 36 months old, and on average, a child is 18 months old at time of eligibility, half of their early intervention time is already over. and losing more than another month and a half can be heartbreaking and devastating for families. Yet, the Bronx is still the largest seeker, if you will, of early intervention services in the entire state, but they are the ones with the least access and the least amount of participation. Can you see where I'm going here? I'm a data nerd, so all of this information just told me that I had found my flagship location for the Inspired Community Project, the highest early intervention referral rate with the lowest participation. 1 in 5 children in the Bronx will never receive an evaluation due to a shortage in professionals, and there's currently a wait list of hundreds of children in need of services. It's also worth mentioning that the Bronx is has one of the highest poverty rates in the entire country, not just the state, which only exacerbates all of the issues surrounding equity, access, and empowerment in education. But again, that's a topic for another day. Why? Why is the Bronx so disproportionately ill-equipped to support their neurodiverse children who live there? So in my 15 years on the New York City education scene, I have learned the only consistent thing that happens when discussing education is finger pointing. This is how I imagine the room where it happens. This is how it looks. Conversations about education, poverty, or really any inequity, this is how I imagine the politicians standing around. The insert government agency here doesn't have the funds. It's too expensive. But if anyone points out any other monies that can better be used for education, they point out understaffed programs and disengaged families. The understaffed organizations always point to the underfunding of education programs, leading to the inability to train or retain staff. If families would just advocate for their kids and get their elected officials to fund these programs, we would be fine. And the families always getting the short end of the stick, having to be activist, organizer, scheduler, banker, coordinator, lawyer, candlestick maker, just to get access to what their child is entitled to have. I knew the Inspired Community Project had to do it differently. We had to think differently, we had to operate differently, and we had to produce differently. I did some deep soul searching about our values and what we wanted to be and what we wanted to accomplish. And it always came back to these 3 words: equity, advocacy, empowerment. We wanted equitable distribution of high quality services. Your zip code should not determine the quality of care you get in any capacity. Education is a human right, and where you live should not impact that. We cannot just provide a service. We must create advocates out of family and community members. The children and family will only be with us for a short time, but it is our job to arm them with the tools and knowledge to push the system forward. Is there anyone more powerful, productive, or motivated than someone fighting for a child they love or a career they're passionate about? Passion and collaboration can and will move mountains. So these became the 3 pillars of our model. We will provide direct service to we'll provide multiple therapies to about 250 children per year. And this is year over year. This is the direct service that is reimbursed by Medicaid and covers our overhead for all of the other programs. Our family advocacy coaching program is a full curriculum centered on creating and supporting resistance to the status quo and the inequities experienced by this community. We will provide coaching, special education roadmaps to help families navigate not only the New York City Department of Education, but inform families of their rights and their options. We're giving strength and tools to those who will be on the fight. And long after those babies leave our center, just because they age out doesn't mean we stop supporting them. Our training and excellence program is key to our sustainable, replicable, and universal community uplift, and what made me fully commit to making the Inspired Community Project a reality. Nerd facts that will shock absolutely no one. The International Society of Performance Improvement found that organizations that invest in employee training tend to have higher levels of employee satisfaction and engagement. I know, shocking. They found that organizations that provide more than 40 hours of training per year have a higher rate of employee satisfaction compared to organizations that provide less than 40 hours of training. Fun fact, in New York State, childcare workers are required to complete a minimum of 15 hours of training each year. And 3 of those hours are focused on child abuse, recognition, and prevention. Now that's very important, but that makes it more like 12 hours of training, and most, if not all, is informational and not skill building. In most jobs, and honestly, from what I'm learning, most fields, this is the trajectory for how employees receive their training and professional development. You begin a job, hopefully with some sort of robust initial onboarding, and then you get job-specific training on the tasks you're completing during the day. Sadly, this is actually a real pain point in education, as it's just assumed that working in a classroom is self-explanatory. You got your degree, you got your license, great, get in there and teach. There's not much more support past that. Next, you're in the job. Yay, you get your first paycheck. You're very excited. You're told to ask questions as needed. You can lean on your coworkers if you need help, but you don't, because imposter syndrome is real. And so you fake it till you make it, and you Google what you don't know. Finally, you're settled. You feel competent. You are offered professional development opportunities or training opportunities. And more often than not, though, you're voluntold to complete some sort of training, and the deadline was actually yesterday. Also, most professional development is to complete some sort of continuing education credits to maintain certifications or licensure, and again, not about skill building, but for requirements to maintain certification. I put an asterisk here because we know that what this looks like in real life. The poor HR team spends most of their time looking more like this. So I wanted to do something different. I wanted hands-on, high-quality, impactful, cost-effective training with frequent feedback and competency checkpoints. Not too much to ask, right? Well, there's one field that's already doing this. Doctors on rotations at teaching hospitals. The hospital training model comprises these 6 ideas. There is lecture learning for content knowledge, rotations for hands-on learning with real people, cohorts of students that can learn and grow and support each other, competency checks and exams to ensure that they're actually retaining and understanding what they're learning, and the idea that next steps are built in. There's no assumption that you'll stay in that program for years. There's no assumption of longevity. The only need is for proper support and guidance for their next steps in their career goals. So why can't we take the best parts of this system and bring it to education? Well, we can, and we did. Look familiar? However, we do one thing differently that the hospital training model doesn't do. While researching for this presentation, I found out that med students don't actually get paid until after they've completed their studies. There is no pay for clinical-based learning or rotations. They don't even get paid for any help in the hospital while they're there as students. And this is unanimous worldwide. It's bonkers. People should really get paid for the work they do, but I digress. So I want to zoom out and start at the highest level of our program. This is our year-long training and excellence program. Module 1 is for all staff. All staff receive training on working with and for the neurodiverse community. This includes everyone from office staff and admin to anyone who may have any interactions at all with our students or families. They are required to attend this training. Module 2, behavior technicians and new teachers get formal training in applied behavior analysis through an interdisciplinary approach, both classroom and hands-on learning. Module 3 is the completion of a 40-hour registered behavior technician course and in-person demonstrations and competency exams. Module 4 is about support, training, and study prep for the registered behavior technician exam, discussion of next steps in their career, next step planning, and placement. The majority of new RBTs will be placed with community partner organizations that double their earning potential. Those who finish at the top of the cohort are offered full-time salaried positions to become teaching assistants or RBTs with us. We believe in promoting from within and leaving space for growth within the organization. Now, this is a universal community uplift. Everyone leaves us in a better situation than they joined us. Zooming in a little bit more, this is what a weekly schedule would look like. All of the members of our Training and Excellence program have a schedule that mirrors more of college class than a job schedule. Every week, built into their paid time on the clock, they are given direct instruction and will attend learning seminars. Immediately after their learning seminar, they engage in classroom intervisitation. Here's where they can have hands-on, supported learning opportunities to try out their new skills. And after their paid lunch hour, they're back in the classroom implementing that direct instruction. Once a month, there is a center-wide intensive training class. This again is a paid 2 to 3 hour direct, focused, and skills-based learning period. This time is built into their schedules, which is also accounted for in the hours of salaried employees, because again, I have this crazy idea that everyone deserves to be paid for their time. Attending these sessions are required and part of the program, but the expectation is explained at the onset of acceptance, and the dates are provided for the entire year, and the sessions are also recorded so they can be watched at home if missed. Now, down to the granular learning. As a special education teacher for over 10 years, I can tell you the best data-backed, time-tested teaching method is the I do, we do, you do method. The I do is the teacher-led modeling and instruction, your traditional learning while someone's speaking. The we do is the collaborative support to try out new skills. So this is done side by side, maybe some modeling, some supports, some corrections, some feedback. The you do is the independent demonstration of a skill. And this cycle repeats and repeats and repeats. This cycle also allows new skills to be taught in digestible bites with space and time for practice and competency. In our learning seminars, new skills, new vocabularies, and new topics are taught, and there needs to be time to practice that. So intervisitation allows for the supportive, hands-on practice of this new skill with real-world competencies and situations. Working with little kids is the best way to create environments where you have to think on your feet. Direct service back in your classroom, you are able to demonstrate your new skill in both a confident and competent way. Congratulations, you have a well-trained, confident, certified staff. Well, now what? Where to next? Well, our staff complete their training, and those at the top of the cohort are offered their salaried positions or either stay on as RBTs or teaching assistants. The other successful cohort members are supported to our programmatic partners in the insurance-based agencies around the city. They are providing school-age children services and paying sometimes double of what they were making when they first joined us. What about the RBTs and teachers? Well, most RBTs who want to keep growing after they receive their RBT certification end up going back to school and completing some level of next education. Our teachers who didn't join us as board certified behavior analysts are encouraged, supported, and supervised to and through certification. We provide practicum supervision and practicum hours. So everyone is leaving us better than they came. Okay, so this is the best part. I know the training model is super impressive, but this is actually my favorite part. It's not just about what we do for training, but it's about who we're training and how we're training them. Our model is about being hyper-local. We are working with a Bronx-based workforce development programs like Bronx Works and Grants Associates. We prioritize hiring from within the Bronx community. We make sure that we are highlighting and lifting up Bronx community members so that they can get training, get support, and work in their own communities. We also work with Bronx-based community or other Bronx-based community organizations and other nonprofits. We also work with the Bronx Chamber of Commerce. We're developing direct internship placement partnerships with Bronx colleges and universities, such as Mercy College and Hostos. There is plenty in the Bronx to support the Bronx. You just have to make it a priority to make those connections. Because of the direct service that we provide, the reimbursement from Medicaid, our model supports and covers all of our training and excellence and overhead. We do not have to fundraise for professional development because we are the professional development. Putting it simply, the Inspired Community Model is a universal community uplift. It's not about the Bronx. It's not about any one specific community. It's not about tailor-making and reinventing. It's about creating a model that has a universal, a replicable system so that any community in need can adapt it. And then the community can begin to dismantle the systemic reasons that their kids are not getting what they need. First stop for us is the Bronx, but then Central Harlem, East New York, Jamaica, Queens. The date is telling me you're up next. So right now, I want to thank Amanda for having us on and for the Alumni Council for having us share our story. I want to spend time doing a little Q&A about our model and about our program. Please check out our website, find us on social so you can follow us along on the journey. If you want to chat with me or learn more, my email's on the screen. It's jill@ticp.org. And I hope you've left this conversation more inspired than you came. And I'm excited to hear your questions.
Excellently stated, Jill. Thank you so much for your time this morning. We are really thrilled to have you here with us. Yes. So we did have an early question come in, which is great. So again, reminding folks, do enter your questions into the Q&A box on your screen. We'll get to as many as we can. But starting off with a question from Margarita, which I think is a really good one. This question is, how is the low EL participation in the Bronx potentially related to access to services in Spanish? So thinking about serving language communities that do not necessarily have English as their first language.
That's a fantastic question. And I love any conversation around cultural competencies or access via cultural competencies. Part of the hyperlocal model and what makes it so successful is when you recruit from within the community, you are therefore then going to mirror the demographics of the community. So just by focusing on hiring from the Bronx, our ratio of bilingual educators and bilingual therapists is significantly higher than other organizations, simply because we're focused on growing from where we're learning. And so when you have therapists that are from the community the students are from, they speak the same languages, and even they speak the same dialects. You know, in the Bronx, you have a Dominican dialect, you have Puerto Rican dialect. You have therapists who speak that in their home, in their own native language. And when you can hire those people to work in their own communities, then you have that pairing. You have families who feel more comfortable coming and having those conversations. If there's hesitations or stigma, there is less barriers when they get to have that conversation with a therapist or a teacher that looks like them, that speaks their dialect, that makes them feel comfortable and can have a first-person experience on those hesitations. So by keeping it local, that's how you keep it supportive for L students or any community, really.
That's really great. And I think it's such an astute piece to tease out around how engaging with members of the community really just proliferates what you can do and compounds on the impacts by being able to speak to folks in their own dialects, never mind their own native languages. And so really, really great, thoughtful piece there. We have another question that has come up regarding early intervention, which is around the family piece. You know, I know that you work really closely with families. You try to draw in the family Also as, folks that are learning alongside the person that you are serving through TICP. And so I would love to know sort of how you're integrating, the family, the wider family, into supporting their child or the person that they are giving care to.
So our family advocacy program is probably the one closest to my heart. Obviously, this conversation was geared around the hospital training model and our training and excellence program, but I could do a whole nother 45 minutes on our family advocacy piece. For us, you cannot teach a child anything if it is not supported at home. If nothing else, I have learned over my decade and change in education, if you are not supporting the family, the child will not be successful. And so for our family advocacy program, it's about giving the tools, it's about check-ins, it's about being accessible. And again, it comes back to that hyper-local of having therapists and educators that look like your family, that sound like your family. And then you're able to go in and provide families with, suggestions or feedback that may be uncomfortable if it comes from somebody who doesn't look like them or someone they don't have that connection with. And so we provide tools, not only actual skill sets of how to work on behaviors at home, how to be responsive at home, what development may or may not look like at home. We're constantly doing generalization checks. Are they learning things at school? Great. How is it carrying over at home? Because if you're learning something at the center, but you're not able to execute it at home, the child didn't actually learn that skill. And so it's very important that we're constantly in contact with the families to ensure that these skills are being transferred and generalized across environments.
Lovely. And just so thoughtful. And to your exact point, I think we really could get into it if we talked about how we're integrating families, but I love sort of that preamble on that. And obviously, to those of you who are joining us online, do check out the website, do check out more information about the resources that are provided through TICP. Segueing to another question, is actually around sort of more nonprofit work, I think generally, and also specific to this sector that you are in, which is, it's an anonymous question, is how are you able to get more funding? It seems to be a critical component. What are the ways that maybe in the tools that you're using to go about supporting the longevity of this work, of TICP and the projects that you're supporting?
So fundraising was absolutely my biggest hesitation going from classroom and education space into the nonprofit space. It was definitely the one I did the most research on and the one I spent the most time trying to build a support system around myself. I was very fortunate to be accepted into the EGF Accelerator program very early on when I started TICP. And this is a collection of nonprofits, and it is a fellowship program where they give you the tools and supports, and they walk you through the steps of fundraising and how to write a pitch deck and how to apply for grants and having those conversations. And that was really transformational for me because as an educator, I'm very aware of knowing what I don't know, but I'm also the first person to find somebody who does. So grants and grant writing was completely foreign to me. But now I can say in the last year and a half, I have submitted and written easily 75 grants. And so I'm learning as I go. And I'm sure if I look back on the initial grants that I submitted, I would cringe, but we've actually won a bunch of grants as well. So, the program speaks for itself, and I'm learning how to speak for the program and how to share the program with others so that those who are looking to fund direct community impact can use us as that vehicle. There is an abundance of money in the nonprofit space. And that was something I had to learn. I had to get out of this scarcity mindset of I have to compete with all these other larger nonprofits. It's simply not true. There are way more organizations looking to give money than are looking to receive money. So for me, I went from donors choose pages and buy nothing groups to fund my classroom to applying for $250,000 grants and these programs and fellowships. And the program has really stood on its own. When I apply for these programs, these grantors are very impressed. And the program only really needs startup funding in terms of fundraising. So part of the reason when I sat down and discussed starting TICP with my husband was I got to make it sustainable. I don't want to fundraise the rest of my life. This is not what I want to be doing. So I had to find a way to make it sustainable. So the Medicaid portion of our direct service will actually carry us in perpetuity. The fundraising is for any extra programmings we would want to do outside of our first 3 months of operating costs, because obviously you have to have money to pay people to provide the programs to get reimbursed for. So once we get our full funding and we have that, we can start providing the services, and then I can write grants for fun instead of necessity.
Writing grants for fun is certainly something to aspire to. I think for many people, it can feel like a hill that you're climbing. But I think to your point, once you kind of get the rhythm and roll of it, you can really start to hit your stride, really, that have the practice of being able to articulate what it is that you're doing for their community. And I think it kind of, you sort of enter a flow state.
Absolutely. It is a skill. And one of the things I have to keep reminding myself, even now when I write grants, is there are people, this is their entire profession. So I do not take it lightly when I am writing a grant and I'm struggling. There are people who go to school for this. They get certifications and degrees in this. So it is not easy by any means. And major praise for grant writers across the world who do this for a living.
Absolutely. And then actually sort of getting into another almost numbers related question, but this is in regards to reach. So we have a question that came in from Susie. Thank you, Susie, which is how many children are able to access your program within the Bronx?
So we are fortunate. We are almost fully in our lease for a space that will have 8 classrooms. That'll allow us to serve about 300 children per year. And because they age out, and so we cycle through different groups of children, we are able to impact almost 350 families per year and employ approximately 80 to 100 Bronx residents per year. Excellent.
That's just so inspiring and really great to think about and how that work can proliferate forward. And sort of as a follow-up question, I know that obviously, intervention services are really interconnected with each other, be that with schools, with other, community centers, with teachers, obviously, like, folks that you've worked with yourself as a former teacher for many years. And so I would love to know, thinking about the children sort of aging out, what are sort of the next steps? What are sort of their offboarding process envisioned to be?
Oh, offboarding and aging out is probably my saddest topic that I have to talk about, but only because, we get really close to our families. We get really intertwined in their lives because we're supporting them through something that can be terribly scary or heart-wrenching or really complicated for certain families. And so we get very involved in their families. And when it comes time for children to start broaching the age out conversation of, okay, family, what are we thinking about next steps? What are we looking at? What kind of schools are we exploring? Historically, what has really made me develop the family advocacy program into what it is I would meet with families who are like, I have no idea. What do I do next? And they have that, hesitation of, oh my God, wait a second, I have to do this all over again. Because nobody explains to them that they think they get into early intervention, they're approved, they've got their IFSP, they think they're good, they get settled, they get comfortable. But when that child turns 3, you start all over again in CPSC, which is the Committee of Preschool Special Education. And it is an entirely different animal. And so our family advocacy coaching program sets them up for success. We go over the types of preschool programs, the types of what's called least restrictive environments, how many teachers, how many children, how long is the day, what are the support services, what supports do you want to try and carry over? Because the other thing that a lot of parents don't get explicitly told to them is just because you have, let's say for a round number, 10 hours of services in EI, you're not guaranteed to get all 10 hours moving to preschool. And what's worse is it usually goes from 10 to 8. And then when they go to school age, it goes from 8 to 4. It's drastically reduced each time you move through these systems. And so our family advocacy program actually gives them that roadmap. It's a little harder to digest on the front end because it's a lot. You're talking about, financial planning for an 18-year-old child when this 3-year-old baby is sitting next to you. But we don't want parents to go unarmed and not knowing what's before them. So by preparing them with these small steps, and even if they choose not to engage in the further conversation about down the line, at least they know where they can go for resources, because that change from EI to preschool to school aged, and then I'm not even going to get into the service cliff that is 18 and 21, where there's nothing after that. We just want to do the best we can to prepare our parents and families for what's going to come after they leave us, so that we can kind of hold their hand, but from afar. Absolutely.
I imagine it is so hard to let these families, pass into the next part of their journey as an educator, and, kind of, I think, going a little bit as a wrap-up question. I think we had a great submission come through, thinking about those next steps, maybe putting on your teacher hat again and thinking about how success, whatever way that takes shape, is measured within the school system. What are families maybe anticipating as they enter, K through 12, and thinking about what schools are sort of assessing around what is this successful benchmarks for these young folks?
So benchmarks and success are very, very subjective, especially in this community that we're speaking to. And when we talk to families, and they come to us with these really prestigious private schools versus the public school versus, community-based programs, we just remind them it's not about what the other kids were getting or what the stats show of those programs. What does your child need? What helps them be successful? What type of environment do they thrive in? Because it doesn't matter how expensive or inexpensive their program is, if it's not setting them up for success with just the basics of what does the environment look like? If you have a friend who needs a quiet environment, are the classrooms chaotic? Are they loud? Are they busy? Are there bright colors? That child's not going to thrive in that environment. I don't care how much that tuition is. So when we talk to families about moving forward and being able to monitor progress, again, it comes back to, is it progress for your family? If that child is getting reports that say he's a star at home, at school, and he's thriving and he's social and he's doing well and he's reading and writing, but comes home and is having an absolute horrible home life because they can't regulate, they can't communicate, they're not able to make their wants and needs known amongst the family, then they're not really being successful. And I would say that's not a program that's being successful because they're not doing that carryover. They're not checking in with the family to make sure, because it's not about how they act when they're with you as a school or an educator. It's about how do they go out into the world? Are they successful in the world to communicate, to get their wants and needs met? Are they able to be within their family structure in a really loving and supporting way that's helping the family be successful? So I say when looking at programs moving forward, it's about what does your family feel is a right fit?
Absolutely. And the journey continues from there, certainly. One way or another, the journey is continuing, and all they can do is just their best to try their best for each other as a family. And with that concludes our Q&A portion. Thank you to all of you who are with us this morning. Thank you to Jillian, and for not only for being here with us, sharing a little bit about your work, but actually, being out there and continuing to do this work with the Inspired Community Projects. It's an honor to have you with us and to be able to share a little bit of your story with your fellow alumni. And so without further ado, I want to thank everyone for being here. I hope to see all of you at the rest of this weekend's programs, and also throughout the coming week during NYU's 18th annual MLK Week. Lots of programs are coming up for all of you, and we hope to see you there. Jill, thank you again.
Thanks so much, Amanda.
All right. Thanks, everyone.